Yes. Okay, I think we are live. So welcome everybody to the Tuesday live stream, November 13th, 2018. This week, I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and with me, I have the beautiful and talented Angie Atkinson. So welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Always happy to be here.
Yes, yes. So while people are hopping on, I guess actually, Angie, do you want to talk a little bit about your latest book and how, let us know about it? Because it sounds like a cool project. Okay.
It's super fun. So I am going to mute us. Hold on. Okay, there I go. I was getting over to your channel page anyway. Okay, so we did this book. It's called The Evolution of Echo. It's amazing. Not that I'm being like, like that or anything, but it just so happens I might have a copy right here. Wait, well, this is so being sent out to somebody, but because it has the wrong cover, but this one, and as you can see, it's a proof copy. It says not for resale across the top, but this is The Evolution of Echo. It is an anthology. It's the subtitle is Raising Our Voices, Stories of Surviving Narcissistic Abuse. And it's actually, it's amazing. It sounds really arrogant to say that because I wrote in the book, but I didn't write the whole book. It is a book full of stories from 20 plus survivors of narcissistic abuse who are also today thrivers. And yeah, it's amazing. The stories, they'll break your heart, but then at the end, they, of each story, they talk about how they triumphed and how they overcame and what they did to kind of heal in that process. And then they offer some different tips and stuff like that too. So I think it's something that's one of a kind. I haven't seen anything exactly like this. Mm-hmm. And to have the whole community, represented here in so many different types of stories. We have men, we have women, different sexualities represented, different types of relationships represented, parent-child, romantic, of course, and among others. And I find it to be, and people with kids, people without kids, different mm-hmm. ages.
Wonderful.
It's really good. So I'm super psyched about it. A lot of people have really been really glowing about it. So, sorry, let me turn that off. So people can learn about it by going to queenbeing.com/anthology if they want to learn more about it and meet the authors and all that stuff too. It's all there. I'm just going to turn my notifications off so I can actually focus. There we go.
Well, very cool. I love that you guys did a book like that. And I love your cover.
Oh, yes, me too. And the cover was done by a survivor. She's an artist. Yes.
Well, she is fantastic. It is.
I totally agree.
Gorgeous.
Thank you. I'm so excited about the way it turned out and everybody's energy going. I mean, it took forever because we had a little editor issue where the editor took the deposit, kept the book, and said she was working on it, didn't work on it or didn't finish it or whatever, didn't turn in the pages, and then asked for an extension. We gave it to her, and then she just disappeared off the planet. She blocked us and wouldn't respond to anything we said, and so I had to fight through PayPal to get the money back. But then I was too burned to hire somebody else, so I did it myself. So it took a minute, but it's done. So
yeah, that's so frustrating. I had a very similar experience with an editor a few years ago, and yeah. It's exhausting. I've thought for a while, I really kind of wanted to make a whole totally unrelated YouTube series about writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
The process of being an author.
It's something. Yeah.
Yes, it really is. It is something. Well, okay. So I guess let's see, switching gears. Got a lot of people hopping on. James, Kit Kat, Mandy, Shastina, Dawn, Nicole, Lapis, Maura, Karn, Vaughn, Kevin, I saw him earlier, Mr. Gigi, lots of people, Kiara. So welcome, you guys.
Happy to see you guys. How are you doing? Okay, keep going. Sorry. I love seeing all the people. I love these. I just know so many of these names, so that's really almost all of them. That's awesome. Yeah.
Anyway. Well, and Shastina mentioned, she says, well, maybe Dana can do her book club on on your book, Angie. She says that would be cool. You know what? We can totally do that. I think that would be great to discuss other people's stories. And the promise of a better tomorrow, that you really can come out on the other side of this and go on to live a good life.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we'll add that to the list, guys. Let me make a note to myself.
And let me know when you do. I'll see if I can't get you some discounts for your book club.
Oh yeah, that would be cool too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. So Angie and I were talking ahead of time about something that we were kind of wanting to talk about today. And we were thinking about the topic of anxiety. Is anybody out there struggling with anxiety?
Let's see. Oh, yes. Hey, you guys, if you have anxiety, hit us up to let us know, yes or no, in the comments real quick. Go ahead. Anyway, Dana, go ahead.
Yes. So the book that we're reading in my book club for this month that we'll be discussing the last Thursday of November is going to be called, it's The Mindful Path to Self-Compassion. And it's by Christopher Germer. And I'm about 50 or so pages into it so far. And it's fantastic. And it really does talk about kind of releasing resistance to different emotions and experiencing them and allowing them to surface and kind of all of the challenges with that and how difficult it can be, because all of these different defense mechanisms that we have, like denial and suppression and projection and, even sublimation. And there's so many different defense mechanisms that we have to try to handle uncomfortable emotions. And it can be so difficult to sit there and just acknowledge them and feel them and give them a name.
Yeah.
And so I was telling Angie that this is something that I've really been struggling with, and especially since the house fire. And I've had a series of other like major life events. It just keeps coming because it's life. And sometimes these things hit in threes, and it can just kind of be one thing after another. And so I've been trying to really just kind of keep my head above water emotionally the past, probably since May, but like for real, it's probably since the last month. And so we were just thinking about maybe talking about some different strategies with anxiety, and I guess just letting other people know, like, a lot of these emotions are just part of the human experience.
Yes.
And that we all struggle with them too. And I think so oftentimes it can look like other people don't have these challenges, or like, oh, they've healed, and oh, look at Dana and Angie, like they do the show and they just have, everything is great all the time. And and I know at least for me, I try to be kind of to provide a place, like a calm place in the storm on my channel. And so I have to kind of feel like I have to kind of keep myself at a certain emotional place, so that other people, because there's only like so much anxiety allowed between any two people.
Yeah.
And I want people to be able to come over and, feel how they feel. And so it's difficult when you're the one that's kind of falling apart, and then trying to also be there for other people. And so I don't know. So I guess let's just talk about maybe some coping strategies, and like, what do you feel has worked for you, or what do you recommend, Angie, for people that are struggling with anxiety or depression?
Well, first, let me say this. I absolutely am with you on that because, I try to stay relatively calm, but I'm also, I tend to lean toward, I need to be the happy one all the time. And I am pretty happy most of the time, but just like you, things happen. And I have those moments where I just lose. I feel like I'm losing it. And even recently, things have come up in my life and I feel overwhelmed or whatever. And something that really helps me is to, first of all, kind of, gather up myself and think to myself, okay, what's really going on here? I'm overwhelmed because X, Y, Z, right? And so I kind of evaluate the situation as logically as I'm humanly capable of doing in that moment. One thing that I think is that if you look at something without emotion, it really helps to kind of get a better grasp on what you can and can't control, and then focusing on what you can control is a huge deal. But ultimately, I think the best place to start when you're just feeling so anxious that you can't breathe when you're having like a panic attack, is to start with something simple like gratitude and go, okay, well, maybe I'm having trouble paying the rent this month, but I can, I have a place to live, I have food to eat, I have a pillow, I'm grateful for those things, whatever, you know what I mean? Like I always like to tell everyone, think of 10 things you're grateful for and 3 things you love about yourself. Because if you take the time to do that, it creates not only positive energy and vibes and all that, but also a pattern interrupt. So if typically when you're spinning out and your anxiety is going all over the place, if you do something different than you normally do, I find a pattern interrupt like that can be as powerful as anything. So you can, another thing you can do if you don't want to sit there and think of gratitudes is you can like stand up out of your chair, go into a different room of the house, or walk outside for a minute, or do 10 push-ups, or brush your teeth, or brush your hair, or take a shower, anything that kind of brings you into this moment and also interrupts the pattern of whatever it is that's going on in your head. So I think pattern interrupts mindfulness in general, which is part of that, I think. And then, of course, gratitude is always one of my first recommendations. And then logic. It's difficult for us as empaths, I think, to sometimes switch our brain to the other side for a minute and focus on logic, especially when we're in pain or when we're scared. But by doing that, I think that we almost touch our higher self a little bit, because fear is primitive. It's something, and anxiety, I think, comes from fear or is a form of fear. And so when we can kind of switch off of the primitive side of our brain just for a moment and allow ourselves to go, okay, let me calm down. And I always tell myself, and you'll probably think this is weird, but it's actually true in my life. I always tell myself I can handle everything and I will fix anything that's wrong. I know how to do it. Even if I don't know how to do it, I'll figure it out. And I know that about myself. And I think anyone here could know the same thing about themselves. So I try to switch to that higher side of my brain. That part of the logical side, I guess, is not really higher. It's just logical. And I try to look at something from a scientific, fact-based perspective instead of emotional. Even though it's not easy, it helps me personally quite a lot.
I think that's some really solid advice. And I just think you articulated that so perfectly, because I agree. I think we definitely do tend to get lost in the emotions. Because I know, at least for me with anxiety, when I start having it to this debilitating degree where I just avoid and I just start shutting down. I quit talking to friends. I quit wanting to leave the house. I have a really hard time even getting out of bed. Like, it just gets really bad really fast. And trying to even pinpoint how I'm feeling, the only thing that even surfaces during those times is it's just too much.
Yeah.
Too much. It's everything. And it's just like this wall of resistance, and it's just incapacitating. And, and I like the idea of doing gratitude. And, that is something that I have been doing. My mantra, interestingly enough, is to try to remind myself, like, I can handle this.
Yeah.
And yesterday I was practicing, just with reading this book, like practicing just sitting there with the anxiety and just experiencing it. Because I think too, for me, so much of these feelings, they increase when I try to get rid of them.
Yes.
So,
I got to add something here. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
But you're totally right. And that is something that I didn't say that I wanted to say and in fact, you said it, and then Eclectic here in the chat said, I think there's a lot of healing in feeling sad or anxious or whatever, and letting you feel sad, knowing that it's okay and that it will pass. She said, I usually just give myself a break. And that is a big, important part of what I didn't say, because you do have to let yourself feel those feelings sometimes, especially when you have a legitimate reason for feeling that way. And sometimes we don't even know why we feel that way, right? But like, you might be feeling anxious one day and not fully grasp why, but maybe it's because earlier today, you heard about a fire in somebody else's house across the country, and it triggered memories of yours. I'm just bringing that. I don't mean to be negative.
Yeah,
okay. But I'm just saying that we do have to let ourselves feel those emotions, including the emotions that, that even when we feel like we're spinning out. I sometimes feel when I'm spinning out, when I say that, I mean when I'm losing control of my emotions and I'm losing control of my ability to feel okay. That's when I use pattern interrupts. Now, sometimes I just need to cry, and that's okay. I'll let myself do that if I need to do that. And I think we all, as survivors, when we're in the relationships with these people, we are so accustomed to shoving our emotions down and not feeling them that we don't even try sometimes. And so it is something I had to, even looking at some of my earlier work, I had to kind of reevaluate it because, and I was doing this today because I was looking at this kid anyway. And I had to realize that you can't just push them aside. You actually have to feel them first and then grow from there. And so I'm glad that you said that and that this person said that you do need to sit with them sometimes. But when I get to the point where I'm spinning and I can't stop, that's when I use the pattern interrupts. Or if I have to function like a normal person for some reason,
Yeah.
That's when I'll use a pattern interrupt to get my head together. And music always helps too. But go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Well, no, you're fine. And I think kind of thinking about what you're saying, something else that I've noticed that helps me is to have a routine. Like it's been really nice and very grounding for me to have these live streams on Tuesday.
Me too.
And to have my live stream on Wednesday, because it's something that this is basically regardless of how I feel, I do it every single week.
Yeah.
And I find within the first, even if I am having days where I'm like, I don't know if I'm emotionally solid enough to do this, the first 5 minutes of being on here, it's that sense of connection to other people. Mm-hmm. And you're kind of getting out of your own mind space to just, I don't know, to share about life with other people, Yeah. And that really helps. And to focus on what other people have going on in their world. And
I always find my work to be very, very soothing for me because I'm sure you get the same thing where people so often are grateful to you for something that you've said that helps them somehow. And for me, that has been very validating and powerful and helps me keep going. And then as I keep going, then I feel more validated and powerful. And it's, you know what I mean? So I think anyone following their passion can help validate them and make them feel, like they have purpose, So, I mean, I know I have other purposes too. I have kids and a family and all the things, but that has been big and important for me. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think maybe like, you're right, like finding an outlet. I mean, most people, have multiple outlets, but maybe even just identifying it. I think one of the biggest realizations I've had lately, and I would be curious if this is kind of a universal thing with people that identify as empaths, is like you were saying, when a person's in a narcissistically abusive relationship, they're very out of tune with how they feel because they've had to push all that down for so long. But I would also guess that they've probably, if they grew up in a household like that, where feelings weren't discussed or they were really minimized or invalidated, that they might not have ever really known how they felt.
Yeah.
And this has been a new thing for me because I'm like, man, I know I feel off, but trying to sit and figure out the difference between like sad and numb and angry. This was a realization the other day. I realized that I have a lot of anger inside of me. Yeah. And I did not realize that. And so since I've realized like, this is how I experience anger. Mm-hmm. And it often comes out as sarcasm and it comes out as defensiveness. Yeah. And it can come out as sometimes like I normally am able to stop it. So I'm not like pot stirring or just, spreading that ugliness in the world, but it's just thinking really ugly thoughts, like just wanting to trash talk basically.
Yeah. I got to admit to that too a little bit, and it's not always it's not ever about anyone else. I mean, some people make me really mad. I'm not going to lie, but when I feel the need to do that, then I know that there's something in myself that's kind of lacking. And I'm not going to lie to you. There are one or two people in the world that I might trash talk to a little bit privately, but it's not ever about any individual person. It's about like things that people do in general, but not usually anything related to my work. So that's
but I think, and I think it's okay, like for people to vent and to do whatever. It was just very eye-opening for me to realize, oh my gosh, like this is how I experience anger. Like some people cry, some people yell, some people eat, some people run. And so I was like, wow, okay, my main things is defensiveness and sarcasm.
That's growth, though.
It is. I agree.
Yeah, to recognize it, I think, just to even see it and go, okay, this is it. This is an issue, or this is something I do. Powerful. I've seen people, you've seen people, when they start to recognize that they're dealing with a toxic person, their whole world turns around because suddenly they know they're not crazy. Our self-perception is so important, and our self-knowledge helps us evolve as people. It's powerful.
It is. And I kind of feel like this has been, in many ways, like all of this anxiety that I've been experiencing since the house fire. And again, it's been multiple things. It hasn't just been that one thing.
Right.
But kind of the gift in that has been this increased awareness. And it's always mind boggling, right? When we find things about ourselves where we're like, that's really wild. How did I not know that that I was feeling angry, right? Or that I was sad, or that I was feeling this way. And so being able to better identify these different emotions. And then you start kind of going down this rabbit trail of like, that's really interesting, because I didn't realize that I was angry about something because I was never allowed to be angry. And so, and this is how I coped with that anger. And I think for me, part 2 was sleeping, and it was eating. And it was just numbing out, like just feeling nothing. I mean, it's just wild. So I guess I would kind of encourage the people in the chat and people in our community to kind of think about some of this stuff too. And like, how do you experience sadness? How do you experience anger? How do you experience depression or numbness or anxiety in general? And I think it can really open this door for all of us to just get really curious about these emotions that are surfacing, instead of what we tend to do is we want to fight them. We want to suppress them. We just want them to be different than what they are.
Yeah.
So that was what I wanted to say.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, I have a question for you if you're ready. Okay. This is from Mandy Walker. Okay. She says, ex-narc texts 3 times a week to ask for a picture of the kids or to tell them hi, but never visits. Is this a hoovering tactic? Been no contact 7 months? Yes. If there's a reason he never visits, as far as legally speaking, then okay. But otherwise, unless it says in the court paper that you have to respond to him for those types of things, then I wouldn't. You may need to let him say hi, but I think it's potentially a hoovering tactic. You just have to be careful and watch whatever your legal papers say on this, whether you choose to respond. Thoughts, Dana?
Yeah. I would just be curious to know how old the children are.
That's a good question too.
Like, do they have their own cell phones, and how was communication before? Like, could he text or call them directly? Or do you guys have a house phone? Like, can the kids call him back? Do you need to be in the middle of that?
Good questions. Yeah.
Yeah. But I would agree with Angie. If he's been kind of MIA for 7 months and is now resurfacing and all of that, I would just kind of document everything and, just kind of keep your emotional shields up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree. And I would say, yeah, be careful for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. You got another one for us?
Oh gosh. Well, here's one from Julie.
Okay.
She says, I still don't know how I actually feel after 3 weeks of no contact. Hell, I don't know if I left him or he left me. Guy, yeah. Cry, not cry, be mad, not be mad. What do you think, Angie?
Oh, I remember 3 weeks after I left my ex-husband. I think the 3rd week was when I started to almost be normal again. And I can't say entirely normal, when I started to think, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to die. Because, even though I know I left him for sure, I felt like I had no choice but to leave him because of who he was and who I was and who our child was. And so I did. But at the end of 3 weeks, I still felt completely numb and confused and everything else. I started to eat again and I started to function again, So I don't think that you can put a time limit on your healing per se. But I think feel what you do feel. If you need to cry cry. If you need to be angry, but don't spend too much time being angry or crying, or whatever it is that you need to do, because sometimes anger propels us forward. And sometimes we need to take a minute and cry and let things out that we couldn't let out for a long time. I think journaling is powerful. I think being aware of yourself is powerful. I think, checking in with yourself several times a day. How do I feel right now? What am I, thinking right now? What do I want today? Those kinds of things, powerful. Start being aware of yourself. Start caring more for yourself than you maybe ever have before. Definitely more than you did during your relationship with someone like that. And definitely stick to no contact if at all possible, or low contact if you do have kids together. And every single day, ask yourself, how do I feel today? What do I want today? And, what do I need today? And then give yourself those things and respect your feelings and try to grow from there. What are your thoughts, Dana?
Yeah. I think there's the ending of these relationships involve a lot of grief, and it's that whole cycle of stages of grief. And there's this wide mix of emotions. And so, like Angie's saying, it's not that kind of feeling what you feel as that surfaces, because there's going to be days that you're okay. And then there's going to be days that you're really not okay. Yeah. And this is all very normal. I would be worried about anybody if they didn't feel like this.
Yeah.
So there's going to be days you're angry. There's going to be days that you're accepting of it ending. There's going to be days where you're full of rage. There's days that you're just going to want to stay in bed and cry and watch a movie. And it's okay. Like, it's okay. Yeah. And the cool thing about healing is so much of this is just an automatic process that your brain is doing. Yes. So you don't need to have all of the answers. And you don't even there's so much of it where you don't even need to take action. Like, seriously, just tripling up on your self-care and being extra good to yourself right now, and trying to really get rid of any additional stress that you possibly can, and just let your brain and your body do what it needs to do to heal emotionally. And then, Angie and I both, there's other people too in this community. We have hundreds of videos on healing and the more of the kind of what now part of it all. And when you're ready for that step, there's tons of information out there. Then you can take that step, but it's totally okay right now to just kind of hunker down and be extra good to yourself.
Yeah. And one more thing I want to tack on to the end. If you're not sure how to be good to yourself, close your eyes for a minute and imagine, if your best friend or your child or someone you really love and care about sincerely found themselves in the same position where they had just gotten out of a toxic relationship, they were feeling broken and lost, and they didn't know what to do. What would you do for them, or what would you suggest to them? And give yourself that same kind of care and suggestion and calmness, because it's hard for us as former codependents to want to take really good care of ourselves, or to even know how sometimes, especially when our parent was also a narcissist and we spent so much time taking care of other people in our lives. So,
yeah. It's like we were talking about earlier about really being so out of tune with our own emotions. And many of us have spent our whole life kind of walking on eggshells and always taking the temperature of other people's emotions.
Absolutely.
And so then and it's weird when you kind of, if this pertains to you, if and when you realize this about yourself. And part of that is like what Angie's saying, the wants and needs. If we're so not only do we not know how to feel, but we also might not know what we want and need. And so then we're struggling with what does self-care even look like? What does it even mean to be good to myself? Mm-hmm. I don't even know what I want or need. I feel uncomfortable asking for wants or needs. And this is, like I was saying earlier, I think this is one of the biggest, I don't mean it to sound like minimizing or hurtful if I say gift, but one of maybe the greatest
silver linings.
Yeah. Something that we can really dig out of this. And it's not that no credit goes to the abuser. Okay. This is 100% us, but this is one of the gems, I guess, that we can kind of dig out of the rubble here, is really getting back in tune, perhaps for the first time ever, with ourselves, with our wants and needs and emotions and our opinions, and connecting with our authentic self.
Yeah. And that's something I say all the time. And I noticed you earlier mentioned the word gift around the horrible situation that happened in your home, the fire. And
Mhm.
I, a few weeks ago, found myself saying on a live stream that it was a gift that I had my mother do what horrible things she did. And I realized that was a weird thing to say, but just like you're saying, it is not because of the narcissist, but because we survived that and we got through it. And now we're making, you and I, we, a community, are taking intentional steps to heal. We become more evolved than the average person. We just do. And I think that is the silver, like you're saying, it's the silver lining. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's real power in that when we can get to a place in our healing to realize that we can't change what happened to us, but we can change the perception of it, and we have complete control over the outcome.
Yeah.
So we can totally take all of this, this awfulness that happened, and we can truly use this for our highest and greatest good. Like, we don't have to just stay there stuck in the rubble and stuck in the mud.
It's an amazing thing.
It really, truly is. It's so powerful. And it's just such a shift in everything when you can get to that place where you can realize that. And that we can, especially as a community with the support of everybody, you can truly, you're not alone in this.
Right.
You can truly just set the intention of, I'm going to take what happened to me and I'm going to use it towards my highest and greatest good.
Yeah. Even if you don't know what that means just yet.
100%. Yep. Game changer. Yep.
Yes. Yes. I have one from Kiera here.
Sure.
She says, I'm so devastated. A friend overstepped my boundaries, but I love them so much that I let it happen. And I keep running back to them despite the fact that they've hurt me multiple times. What is wrong with me? You want to start? Or you want me to start?
Sure. I'll start.
Okay.
I guess my question is, with the boundaries, like, have you ever set boundaries with this person? Because here's the thing with boundaries is nobody else knows where our boundaries are.
Right.
And so it's really important that we let that be known.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add, I agree with that 100%. And I'm going to add that, when you keep running back to them, despite the fact that they hurt you multiple times, what is wrong with me? That is your question. My answer to you is that you don't value yourself enough to, and I don't mean any disrespect by saying that, but when we do that, part of it might be that we just don't think we deserve better. Part of it might be that, we don't, like Dana said, we haven't set our boundaries, and maybe that person doesn't know they're hurting you. But if we are talking about a toxic person and you're pretty sure that person's toxic in your life, which it sounds like they are, if a simple discussion doesn't resolve the issue, I assume that you explain to that person that they hurt you. And if I'm wrong, let me know. But, going back despite the fact that they keep hurting you, to me says that you need to take a deeper look into yourself and your self-acceptance and your self-worth and your ability to value yourself. So start with those boundaries. And I don't care if you have to fake it till you make it. If you have to pretend that you think you're good enough at first, do it, because eventually you'll realize that you are, good enough to have boundaries and to have people respect them. And I know that because you're a human, as far as I can tell, and any human deserves that, and anybody who exists has the ability and the right to set boundaries for him or herself, and is worth having those boundaries respected, especially, by someone who you may need to just move forward and find a different friend. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Or do you have
I think it's setting boundaries, because here's something that I experienced for sure. And I see a lot of other people in our community going through is we oftentimes think, that it's 100% the toxic people. Right. And we're like, okay, if I just keep getting all of these problematic people out of my life, then everything will be fine. And that is a big part of it. But it's imperative that we get in tune with our boundaries and understand when they've been crossed, and understand how to kind of right that imbalance.
Yeah. And because you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's going to keep happening. People don't know. I mean, they really don't. And there's certain things that are extreme that they should just know, right? Like not to invade your personal space without asking, or like not to borrow your stuff, or to repay you if they borrowed money. Like there's certain kind of standards of behavior that we just assume as a society that adults know.
Right.
But certain things, like if they're calling you in the middle of the night, or because sometimes stuff like that, like, or if they're asking you to babysit their kids for way longer than you're comfortable with, like they, in their world, like that might not be a big deal, but if it's a big deal to you, then it's worth addressing. And I think too, when we can start shifting our understanding of boundaries, because it can feel so mean and uncomfortable when we start asserting ourselves.
Yeah.
But when you're around the right people, and when you can learn to assert yourself in a place of kind of just honesty and tactfulness, and this does take practice, because oftentimes we'll just kind of continue to stuff these resentments down until the lid blows. And then we're not being tactful. And then we're like, well, I set my boundary and now they're not talking to me, or I called off the friendship. And really things might have gone different had we addressed it before that resentment built up.
Yeah.
So much. But addressing things, when you can get to that place of setting boundaries with somebody else, it's about being honest. It's about bringing your authentic self to that relationship. Mm-hmm. And it really helps when it's the right friendship or the right relationship, it helps to strengthen it, because then you truly are going through things together.
Yeah.
And there's this sense both people have to be vulnerable enough to be like, hey, that really hurt my feelings, or, let's talk about this, or blah, blah. And then there's this real conversation that comes out. And then next time, then they realize, oh, I can be open with her about this.
Yeah.
And then they can say the same, and that your friendship is actually, there's a foundation there.
Yeah. And that's a really good point that I think a lot of us as survivors have to recognize, is that just because someone crosses our boundaries that weren't defined for them, it doesn't necessarily mean they're a toxic person. I think in many situations, we can give them at least one opportunity to rectify that, because some people really aren't horribly toxic. They're just clueless about your boundaries, or they have a different understanding of something than you do. Yeah. Great point.
And the thing is, here's the kicker is, we will not find a healthy relationship a healthy relationship has to be created. I guess that's the first thing. It's not something that's just found. It's not like we just stumble across it. Right. Like, it's something that's created. And until we get a really solid understanding of ourselves and our boundaries and standards and deal breakers, a healthy relationship is not possible. And this is one of the other really big aha moments for me, is looking back on my life and how many, mainly friendships I had that went south because I didn't know how to assert myself. And the situation became toxic. Like sometimes the people were toxic, but there were just as many that I think those situations could have gone a very different path had I known how to bring up my frustration and just assert myself. So so many things just went off the trail because I didn't know how to do that. And it's a skill that we have to practice.
Yeah. Good points. Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
I have one from Kit Kat.
Okay. And then I have one from Beth after you.
Okay. All right. Kit Kat is somebody that I'm sure we've both talked to. I know she's been over on my channel since before she got divorced, and we've worked together through this whole thing. And she says he's getting married on December 28th. Now, I'm telling you, it must not have been a year ago that he left. I don't know. And she says, 1 year after all this ended, after our 23-year marriage. Ooh. She said he didn't even tell the kids he was engaged, and he hasn't told me anything, just feeding the information. I just want to say, first of all, I'm so sorry. I know that's painful. And secondly, unfortunately, it's not surprising, because as he indicated by jumping right into that relationship, it felt like 10 minutes after you all split up. I don't even think you were divorced yet, if I remember correctly. Narcissists can't function without constant supply. And when you shut down the supply factory, he jumped onto the next available shift. Is that a made up thing? Yeah. He jumped on it. He got into the next possible relationship, and whether that was the right one or not. So the way that he's treated your children is, especially not even telling them, is horrible. And unfortunately it doesn't, there's not a lot we can do about it. You, on the plus side, you're free and freer than ever. And this takes him off your hands a little more, more completely, at least for a while. But obviously you still have to deal with him for the kids. And I would just say it's the whole, not my circus, not my monkeys thing. I would do your very best to not even pay attention to that. That's not your problem. Just be aware of what happens with your kids in relation to him. And that's it. Go ahead. Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah. Bless you. I think it is. It's, 23 years. That's a lot. And I can only imagine the pain of somebody moving on so quickly and so callously, just not even having the decency to talk to the kids about it or any of that. I'm sorry. That's just so hurtful. And,
right.
I think just kind of, I think so much of this goes back to just tripling up on your self-care. And I would imagine that you probably have a wide range of emotions right now. And again, that's normal and it's okay. And, getting support in whatever form that looks like, whether it's friends, whether it's with Angie, whether it's the live streams like, here, all of the above, just really take an extra good care of yourself right now. So it's hard when you realize when they are now getting remarried. Like it's fully, they've moved on to the next chapter.
Yeah. It was when I heard about my ex-husband getting remarried, it was when I very first started dating my current husband, who's, to be perfectly honest with you, it was almost 4 years later. But I still had a weird feeling. It wasn't like I was sad, but I was kind of bummed. Not bummed, just like, well, that's weird, And she says she's okay, but she said she seems good with the kids, which is expected almost. Go ahead.
That's huge. That's I love hearing that. I always worry so much about the kids in these kinds of situations. And man, if you can have a good step parent that's good to your kids, that in itself is score one for that. So yay for that.
For sure.
Let's see here. I've got a question from Beth, who it's more of a statement, but something I think we should address, who says, as someone stated above, nearly after a year, I still feel so abnormal, in quotes. I am not moving forward as I'd hoped I would. It's really hard for me. So I guess let's just touch a little bit on like what moving forward looks like, because Angie, I know you probably say this time and again as well. And I think there's this idea of what moving forward is. And the idea of what it is, the expectation of what it is what tends to get so many people stuck and feeling like, what's wrong with me? And so many people think moving forward somehow means going full circle and going back to the way we were.
Oh, yes.
And right. But life is never about that. Life is always about growth, and growth is always moving forward. And so any type of traumatic event is going to change a person. Yeah. Now, this doesn't mean that we have to stay broken or that it has to change us for the negative. It just means that it's changed us. And so now it's really moving forward is really about creating a new normal. And that new normal can be a really empowering, amazing chapter in our life that's full of self-awareness and personal growth. And it can be full of a lot of amazing things. But I think it's just really key to realize that moving forward does not mean going back to the way you were. That's
spot on. I just want to add, look, some of y'all like Kit Kat, 23-year marriage. If she wanted to go back to being who she was at the beginning of that 23-year marriage, it wouldn't matter if it was an amazing marriage. 23 years changes a person. Having kids changes a person. Buying a house changes a person. All the things that we go through in life, even the non-toxic things, change us. We can't, you know, if I wanted to go back to being who I was before narcissistic abuse, I guess I'd have to be a fetus, y'all. You know, you you can't become exactly what Dana said. You can't become who you used to be. It's like if you gain weight and you want to, you know, fit back in the jeans that you wore in high school, maybe you can get that narrow again, right? But those jeans are way out of style, most likely. You know, that's a silly way to put it. But my point is, become the best version of yourself as you are today in this moment. Decide who that is. You get to define it. You know, that's the really exciting, fun part of this, is that, you know, we've spent our whole lives being told who we are, you know, or at least our most recent relationships, right? But for me, it was my whole life being told who I was supposed to be, and feeling like a big freaking failure because I wasn't that. You know, so going through all of this, I was suddenly able to go, oh, wait a minute, I am actually this person, or whoever. I'm this person right here, you know, and that's okay with me. I'm somebody who wears red lipstick, and, you know, I don't know, whatever I am, but I'm just throwing that out there because I thought of it right now. I'm a little loopy from the sneezing. Anyway, but my point is, you can't ever be that person again, even if it was, you know, 6 months ago, because trauma does change you, and also time changes you, and normal life events change you. So don't shoot for who you were, shoot for who you want to be.
Yes, 100%. And I think, and thank you for bringing that up, that it's not just trauma, it's life and it's time. Because sometimes I think then people can start becoming very understandably so resentful.
Yes.
Like, well, now this trauma has really shaped me, and I feel cheated, and I'm angry, and it's not fair. And I get it. I totally do. But we're always in this state of evolution.
Yes.
And I actually really liked your jeans analogy of like kind of what fit us then is not relevant now.
Exactly.
You know, and it doesn't look good on us. Like, you know, those high waist, well, maybe for some people, like this high waisted bell bottom jeans, like that's not working. And
right.
but that's, I think what's so cool is if we realize that our life is lived in chapters. And so now you get to reinvent yourself. Like, who am I in this chapter? And steer into that.
Absolutely. And that, if you look at it from the right perspective, can be very fun and exciting, I think. You get to discover what your passions are, or if you already know, embrace them, and start to really, you know, create a self that's really a cool person, you know, that you can really, and I mean that in a subjective way, because everybody thinks cool is different. You know what I mean? Some people might think Dana and I are nerds for doing YouTube videos. I mean, you know, we think it's cool though. So, you know, anyway, I'm just being silly now. All right. You got another one for us?
Let's see. Well, let's see. Healthy Love had mentioned something about, and I lost the comment, but something about realizing that when we're trying to go back to the way we work, so we're like, I want to go back to normal. I want to, you know, I want to move forward. I want to move forward into normal. The realization that so many of us hopefully have, I think it's a really important game-changing revelation, is when realizing that what was normal for us before wasn't healthy. It just didn't explode in our face until the ending of this relationship.
That's important.
It's really important, because so much of the thinking that we had, a lot of the world has. And so we just kind of go through life not realizing that the way that we're going about things is a problem until we encounter, until we're proven otherwise.
Yeah.
And then even then it's really difficult to see, because it's so easy to be like, man, this person was really, their behavior was outrageous and like pathological and like wild. And so it's easy to just see like that they are the problem, but there's, back to the whole like digging gems out of the mud, there's so much that we can examine about our own because when a narcissist is in our life, if they're not a parent, you know, if we're a willing participant in this relationship, odds are, there's not even odds are, there has been some vulnerability that's been exploited. And it's so imperative that we start examining that, like how it's like examining, if you start finding cockroaches in your house, you know, it's a good step to start looking at the weather stripping. And, you know, so like, it's so often like we start realizing, and the weather stripping in this sense being like boundaries and standards and deal breakers. And so like going around and examining like, oh my gosh. And then it's like pulling a string on a sweater. It's like, oh my gosh, like I was saying earlier, I didn't realize that I should be more assertive with people. I thought I needed concrete proof in order to walk away.
Yeah.
Or not realizing that squirrely behavior is as concrete proof that any of us need. Like that in itself is proof that there's a problem.
Yep.
So many lessons that we can glean out of this and that we can use towards our highest and greatest good.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. Could not. I want to bring this one forward. It's a kind of the continuation of Kit Kat's comment from earlier. She said that it does seem like mission accomplished on his end, and it's what he planned to do. She says 1 year later, she's added a lot to her life, but she isn't dating, and she feels like he thinks he's accomplished something here. And look, yes, he's accomplished something. He definitely hooked in a new supply, and it was someone who probably also wants kids, someone who probably also is, feeling like they're not getting any younger. I don't know. And probably a very nice person who might really care about your girls. So good for that, but on the flip side of that, I would just say you not dating at all is totally fine. If you're not ready to date, just because he rushed into a marriage doesn't mean you need to rush into anything. You know what I mean? I wouldn't. I've already decided, even if my current husband dies, I'm never getting married again. It's too much work, but it's hard. It's hard, but it's worth, it's worth it, of course. But I'm just saying, I don't think you need to date until you're ready to date. Make sure you're ready. I know you've added a lot into your life. I know you've grown tremendously, and you have developed a spine of steel, my friend, and I'm thoroughly impressed. But again, I don't think you need to feel like you need to rush into anything. And I know you know that. I'm just reiterating and reassuring you that you're on the right path. Dana, what are your thoughts? Anything?
I agree. And I would flip the script on that. I would not look at it as, he's keeping you from dating. You're making the decision to not date. He hasn't won jack squat. And if anything, like that's the thing with these kinds of people is, it's like the saying goes, like you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Like he was the one playing a stupid game. Now he wins a stupid prize. Congratulations. Your kids are upset with you and you ruined a great family. Yeah. Slow clap. Congratulations. You know what I mean?
Clap. Yes.
It's, so it's ridiculous. Like these little victories that they have in their own mind. And so in making the concerted effort to like, I'm not going to own any of that. I'm not going to own that. I'm not dating because I'm busy building a better version of me.
Yeah.
So,
and I feel like
it's nothing to do with you, buddy. Like
exactly.
This is not me.
Yes. And I feel like until you're ready to go, you know what, I'm totally fine right here by myself, even if I never meet that Mr. Right or whatever. That's about the time Mr. Right tends to come walking down your street. I'm just throwing it out there. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's a comment from Beth. We were talking about moving forward and, doing all that. And she said that she does not like who she is today. So, okay, Beth, you have hit on something. A lot of people struggle with this. I get it. I was there for a long time too. But this is a key realization. And that can be the turning point of like, okay, I don't like who I am. Okay, great. Let's get clear on the you that you do want to create. I had shared this before that I had this moment, right after my relationship with Jack blew up, and I was in the shower and I was crying and I was like, man, I don't love, like, why am I so unlovable? What is it about me? Why can't I why do I have all these toxic people that treat me like garbage in my life? And it was at that moment that I realized I didn't love me. And that was when things began turning around and realizing I needed to start loving me. And so if you don't like you, it's important that you start building up a Beth that you can like. And it doesn't have to be in massive ways, but like in small ways on a regular basis. Like, what would a version of you that you like look like? Not just physically, but like emotionally. What kind of hobbies would she have? What kind of friends? What kind of food would she eat? What would her bedroom look like? Like all of these little things, like really getting a clear picture of this person.
I agree with that. And I would also add that maybe you need to reevaluate what you don't like. And the reason I say that is because, for example, growing up, I was told that I couldn't be an artist because artists didn't make any money. And so I pushed that aside, the art creativity thing I had going on. Or I was told that, I don't know, I'm not even going to tell you all the things I was told. I'm going to make something up right now. I was told I was too short. I wasn't, but let's say I was, and I am too short. What's too short? I'm normal height. I'm 5 feet. Anyway, that's normal for me. But I was, let's just say that was a thing I was insecure about. And so I would grow up my whole life thinking, it's bad to be short. It's bad to be short. I'm short. I don't like short. And then one day, maybe, and again, this is a hypothetical, but this exact situation happened on many qualities that I actually do have, where I realized, okay, a better example, I think too much, and that's really the truth. And I overthink everything. I investigate things too much. I want to know all the facts and all the things. And that was told to me, I was constantly put down for that. And it turns out it's why I'm good at what I do today. It turns out it's why I was a journalist and why I became a coach, why I learned all the things I learned, because I'm obsessed with knowledge and I love to learn things, and I always try to find out the answers to any problem I go through. And by doing what I've done, I've created, just like Dana has, this community around us, ourselves, each other, together and separately, where we help a lot of people who are very similar to us, and we help show them the information that they need. And so for me, if I continue to hate that part of myself that was nosy and needed to know all the things and that thought too much, I would be a failure. I would not be doing what I'm doing. And so that's why on my personal blog, I think my tagline is, sometimes I think too much, because I do. And so now, instead of pushing that away and not liking that about myself, I've decided to embrace that. So there are some things that about you that maybe are things that you have been criticized for that turn out to be not so bad. So reevaluate and make sure that you really don't like all the things you're about to change, because maybe you really do and you just haven't recognized it yet because you've always been told it's bad.
Yes, I love that 100%. Oh man. Oh, that's so great. And so relevant. My goodness. Sometimes
I think too much.
Yeah. Well, I feel I can just relate to all of that. I bet there's probably a lot of people in the chat that can really relate to all of that. And
I suspect so. Yes.
And you start realizing, like, oh my gosh, all of these things about me, that they just make me. And like, there's a lot of things about me that are lovable. What is that quote? I forget who said it, like Einstein or something.
I know it. Everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree or ride a bike or something, it'll live its whole life thinking it's stupid.
Yeah.
My favorite. Yeah.
100%. And man, when you get around, and I think that it just all goes back to like knowing ourselves, and then really, I think, loving what you find. And when you start really getting in tune with that and you own it, and we're not apologizing for it, we're not living a life in the shadows, feeling less than. And we're like, yeah, you know what? This is just me. Like, this is who I am at this chapter in my life. And we can embrace that. There's something that's I feel like so attractive about that. Not just for like dating partners, but for other people, because then when we're comfortable with us, then I feel like other people can breathe.
Truth.
And like it gives them space to just be themselves too. And we can just kind of hang out in our imperfections and in our uniqueness. I think that's a better way to say that. In our uniqueness. And then you start finding people, instead of fighting those parts of yourself, you're exploring them.
Yes.
And like, yeah, this is just me. Like, I really because I'm with you. Like, I really love these really deep conversations, in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And, certain things that are just quirky, and you start finding other people that love that too. And then all of a sudden it's not weird or bad or wrong.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
when you can accept yourself, I say this all the time, accept yourself unconditionally. So if you don't like things about, I don't like the fact that I have 3 C-section scars in one place that the doctor tried to sew them all together, and it's not great. I don't love that about myself, but I just, wear underwear. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's coverable. My point is, there are going to be things that we don't like about ourselves, and we can sit there and we can go, oh, I hate that about myself. Or we can go, okay, that's a fact about myself, let's move on. And then let's think about things we do like. Or again, like with me being, always wanting to know everything and always digging into everything and figuring out what stuff is and annoying the crap out of people in my life.
Mhm.
Now I use that power for good instead of evil. Not that it was ever evil, but it was annoying apparently to some people. So I guess that's the all good stuff. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the exact same way. Like, that's kind of the benefit too of like being a writer, right? Like we get to just do these deep dives into certain topics. And
Yeah.
it's so cool because when you can meet other people, especially people that are interested in the same topic,
Yeah.
you just find your tribe. And it's like
Totally.
you can dork out on like the deep dives about certain specifics that you can find.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. I hear you.
Exactly. I love it. I'm totally into dorking out. Oh, and off topic, my kid is like a musician, and he's doing tuba and he's doing piano, and now he just made the winter drum line, which is very competitive where we live, and he only practiced percussion for 3 days before making it. I mean, he's playing it in,
Wow.
but it's really exciting. So my but what we can do different. My reason for bringing that up is because if we are parents in this group or anywhere, anyone listening later, um, we can change our children's experience if we haven't already starting today, and showing them that not only are we proud of them and excited, and I'm totally dorked out is what reminded me of that. I was a band geek too, but this was all him. Um, but we can also encourage them and let them be validated in their experiences, whether they make the drum line or not. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And I think that's a big part of what I've been trying to get across to everybody, and with the Echo anthology, to try to we can create change that's worldwide. Like if we just, those of us here today, those of us who watch these videos or in these videos, whatever, we can change the way that we deal with other people, our children or other people that we affect in the world, and then discontinue the cycle of toxicity in our generation, in our potentially in our family, our bloodline, etc. So I think there's so much that we could do. Anyway, keep going. Sorry. I got all distracted and
Yeah.
philosophical.
No, I love it. I love it.
Thank you. All right. Let's see here.
And
Oh, and Kit Kat, I just want to add this one more thing from Kit Kat. She says, even though I know it's all fake and contrived, I wouldn't want to be married to him. She said, I wouldn't want to be married to him. And the house is much more peaceful to myself and the kids. She still felt herself stressing like that, but she was doing what we talked about. So she knows the answers, and she's been knowing the answers for a while, but sometimes she just needs a little reassurance, and we all do, and that's why we're here. So
Mhm.
yeah, go ahead. You got one for us?
Oh, I'm still looking. Beth had made a comment about she's having trouble stopping playing detective and trying to go, keep an eye on them or figure out what they're up to and that kind of stuff. And I just wanted to add to that. A lot of people really struggle with that. Um, I will be honest. I have pulls to go every now and again. Totally just random things. I'll just be thinking, oh, I'm curious. I want to go on Facebook. I stop myself. But what works for me to do that when those feelings surface, which is very few and far between, it's basically boredom at this point when that stuff does surface. There is a meme, and I'll have to see if I can find it. You can probably Google it and find it. It's Yoda. And it says, like, if your ex's Facebook page you go, only pain will you find.
Oh, that's legit.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's so true. And that's just stuck with in my head over the years of like, there's nothing there except more pain. What you're going to see is going to be, they call Facebook fake book for a reason. And it's people are out there pretending to live their highest and best life. So you can't even really tell if the pictures they're putting on are really accurate.
Right. And to be fair, I want to just put a little, star here. I think everybody does that. I mean, I have to be honest with you. If I'm crying and I have makeup smeared down my face, I'm not putting a picture on Facebook because I'm not a drama queen. But and I'm only going to probably put pictures up of things that make me happy or make me smile because,
Yeah.
you know,
It's like what you want to remember, right? Like it's the scrap,
exactly.
it's the online
It's the
scrapbook of your
highlights.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
the highlights. So
It's
like,
there's a quote. It's like if you're comparing your everyday life to someone else's highlight reel, you're gonna have a problem or something. And if I
yeah.
compare my real life to my, to my highlight reel, my own, it's
Yeah.
not, you know what I'm saying? So don't don't be mad at people for only putting their best stuff on Facebook. Just recognize that it's only their best stuff. And then of course narcissists put fake crap up there all the time. But even, I mean, even those stupid selfie filters, I mean, they're fun. And sometimes I've played with them. I have one on my profile right now. It's just mostly little flowers, but it's cute and fun and it's okay. But you don't want to look at that picture and think I really have flawless skin because I promise y'all I don't. Okay. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, but being honest with yourself is important, but also fake book is indeed fake book.
Yeah.
But
It's just part of, human nature. And
yeah,
like Angie's saying, nobody wants even like a real life photo album. Like nobody puts in the bad photos, right?
right,
Or like
right.
the painful times that we don't really want to remember.
Yeah.
So
And you will see people who will tell all of their business on Facebook, and you'll still see people who
yeah.
will tell some of their bad business. But now, some people do it, I think, for good reasons. I know there's one person in the chat right here who has said a few things publicly. She happens to be my friend on Facebook, and she's had a few things publicly, but not publicly, but she said them to her small group of friends on Facebook that was well curated. And it was okay that she did that in this circumstance. But I see people all the time publicly throwing their personal drama out there. Like there's one couple that I know where somebody apparently they had some kind of big fight. Somebody took off in the car and it was a whole big, it was all over Facebook. Like I need to see that. So I don't think that it's even appropriate to put all your negativity on Facebook personally, but that's because that's how I feel. I'm just saying that in certain circumstances, it is appropriate to say what you need to say, but I don't know why I'm talking about Facebook. I'm sorry. I get distracted sometimes and just go on tangents. Let's move on.
Okay. And then real quick too, Beth was saying, and I misinterpreted her original question. She says by detective, she was Googling stuff on her phone. She says, it's not looking him up. It's hard to explain. He has done so much to me in such horrible ways. Okay. So I think like trying I refer to this as kind of like the information gathering. And again, I think everybody goes through this because when you encounter somebody that's so malicious and their behavior is so outrageous and just unnecessary, it's so dramatic and erratic and emotional. It's like, of course, people are going to try to figure out like what on earth happened. Right.
Yeah.
So that's, I think very, very normal. And it can be difficult to kind of shift out of that and to like let go from trying to figure out all of that. But I will say, I feel like the more, a person understands like the vocabulary surrounding all of this, the more they understand that there are people out in the world for a wide variety of reasons that they don't bond effectively to others. And the way that they interact is through this series of games. They create chaos and they're crazy makers.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, just not everybody is like you or like me. Like people are very, very different. And so understanding that, like the toolkit that we had to understand and interact with the different people in the world was generally incomplete because the stuff isn't taught until we need it, basically. So yeah, it's normal, I think, to try to figure it all out.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I cannot disagree with that. I absolutely, and Mr. Gigi adds, coping with the reality of where you left off when you were single before you met the narcissist is very difficult, especially if you're doing no contact or gray rock and keep attracting narcissists. And I think that's really true. But again, if you're going through the healing process, you will learn to what I think happens, and I've talked about this in videos before, is when you do unconditionally accept yourself and eventually unconditionally love yourself. I like to say self-love. Some people don't. because you do have to love yourself, but you start with acceptance, start with being okay with who you are. When you get to that place and you think to yourself, okay, well, yeah, I'm not perfect, I'm flawed, I'm totally flawed, but I'm okay with it. And I still deserve to be happy, even though I'm flawed, because everybody's flawed. Then you stop attracting people because you set boundary. You stop attracting narcissists, toxic people, because they're not into people who are self-assured and who, I mean, they kind of want to be into those people, but people who set boundaries clearly and firmly, narcissists kind of step back from, because they can't get what they want from somebody like that. So if you're able to put yourself in that place where you unconditionally accept yourself, you set and enforce your boundaries, and you don't let somebody, like my ex-husband was famous for toe in the line. And what I mean by that was putting his toe right on the boundary line and tapping it till it hurt. And I mean that metaphorically, but it happened consistently throughout the marriage, always almost overstepping the boundaries. And like Dana calls that, it's squirrely behavior, and it's not acceptable. So don't be afraid to walk away from toxic, but also do, as we talked about earlier, set your boundaries and state them if necessary.
Yeah. I would also, if this is a repeating pattern for you, to write down maybe like the last handful of are we talking women? Did he say?
I believe he is talking women.
Okay. The last handful of women that you've been attracted to, and then think about what was it about them that was so attractive. Because generally, if you can kind of find that hook, there tends to be a repeating hook.
Yeah.
So, is it that they tend to move fast? Is it that they're a lot of female narcissists are very seductive. They're very kind of overly sexual. They do the love bombing too. They're just quick. We can often misread a lot of this behavior and just misread it as like, oh, this person's so fun. They're so playful, but when really they're really immature.
Yeah.
They're so.
I did that. Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. They're so I don't know, like high energy, but really they're intense because again, it's kind of, there's no boundaries on their end. And so they just.
And my inner teenager still loves the bad boys, the intense, the guy like Christian Slater in that one movie where he was the DJ. Oh my gosh. When I watched that movie as an adult, I'm like horrified. What was that movie called?
Pump Up the Volume.
Volume. Yeah. I was horrified when I watched it as an adult, and I realized what a freaking psycho he was. But when I was watching it as a teenager, I'm like, oh my God, he's so intense. You know what I'm saying? Like, what was I thinking? That explains a lot, y'all. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, and every problematic person comes across differently. So so it's good to kind of see the pattern, because I'm with you, Angie. Like I like people, like my quote unquote bad boys. It wasn't about like a motorcycle and a bunch of tattoos. It was exactly that kind of character.
Me too.
Like the deep thinking kind of loner, question everything, totally find the scorching the earth.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that except for the scorching the earth part, I think that's because we have that part in ourselves. You know what I'm saying? And but then and you want to be like the we could talk about that for hours. I'm just going to leave it at that. I agree with you. And on an unrelated note, I'm mildly amused at how much Philip DeFranco sometimes reminds me of Christian Slater when he was younger. That's all. Okay.
I could kind of see that.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah. It's something in the way that he talks. I can't put my finger on it exactly, but it's something about him. Maybe his voice. I don't know. Anyway, I just want to say really quickly hello to Angela Falsetta and James F. Those are two of my amazing channel members who are on board today. I'm sorry if I missed anyone else, but I want to say, and the people that sponsor the channels. And Angela is my first one, and she noted this, and I just want to say this to her. She's right. Playing detective on your narcissist is still kind of in fight or flight mode. I agree with that. It's one way that some of us go into flight or fight. I go into fight mode that way. I try to figure out all the details, as you might have gathered from me being nerdy earlier today. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say. But do you have it? I know we're a little over time, and I'm so sorry about that. But do you how do you want to do one more each, or how do you want to do it?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll have to dig up one here. Okay. But if you have one, go for it.
Okay, let's see here. Oh, I like this. What Agatha says, and I'm not sure if Agatha. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Healthy love. I'm going to go with that. Okay. Healthy love says, and if you already read this, forgive me because I didn't mean to reread it. Just stop me. Okay. She said, I don't really like the idea that we attract them. Did you already read that one?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. Okay. She says, I don't really like the idea that we attract them. Light attracts all the bugs, butterflies, and moths and flies. She said, we choose who we want to interact with. We have a say once we present to it, once we're, aware of it. And I think that is powerful stuff, because you're so right. Most of us in this room have a certain empath quality, and I like to call it light. We have a light about us. And I think it would be safe to say that most of the toxic people in our lives, they have this darkness about them. And I have seen it myself in people. And one thing that I talk about all the time is that, Dana, I'm sure we've talked about it. Have you seen True Blood?
Yes.
The TV show?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the vampire fairy thing, right? So the fairies, they are light. Basically, they are light embodied, and they smell good and taste good to the vampires. And if the vampires, so they're very attracted to them. If the vampires consume them, they eat the fairy, then the fairy dies, but the vampire then can walk in the sunlight, which they cannot otherwise do. I find this very, very, similar. I think it's a great metaphor for who we are and who they are. And then I think the other reason that the fairies tend to be attracted to the vampires, which also kind of could explain why some empaths are attracted to narcissists, is that the fairies, they can read everybody. They can hear everybody when they walk by, and their thoughts. We don't really hear people's thoughts per se, but we read people's body language, and we read people's faces and all of this. And I think that and the fairies, they couldn't hear anything from the vampires. Well, we can't always read, the narcissist, because they're putting on a false self, a false mask, and they may even be in control of the way their face looks and the way their gestures are, and causing us to misread them. So I think it's just a very good comparison. And I really like what Agatha, what Healthy Love said. So
yeah. I agree. Like, I think, it is kind of just that scorch the earth thing. Like, they're so unhappy, like they just can't effectively connect to other people. Yeah. And so, they end up either intentionally or unintentionally just destroying anything good around them, because, you've got to be able to really be happy and healthy and grounded enough with yourself in order to give that to others. And they don't have that.
Yeah.
And
the fact, and she's right that we do attract more than just toxic people, but toxic people are among the people that come.
Yes.
And so we have to be choosy, and we have to recognize. So yeah, I like that. Okay.
So yeah, so many like lessons in all of this. And it really is cultivating or refining that ability to be discerning. Mm-hmm. And being able to tell like the difference between like a charming predator and a likable person.
Yeah.
And whereas, normal people, like Travis and I have this conversation every now and again, like he just doesn't get it. Yeah. And so when I talk about anything in all of this level of depth, like this is just so foreign to him. But it's like, you just have to level up. Like when you realize that the world is not the way that other people think it is, like there's a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing walking around out there, and you have to just level up your skill set with how we go about interacting with other people. This doesn't mean that we have to stay hypervigilant. It just means having a healthy degree of skepticism and going slow and being aware of our own vulnerabilities enough to realize when they're being pulled on.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Yeah. And yes, being choosy about who we let in our inner circle.
100%. Yep.
Okay, let's see. I'm still looking for another question here. Do you have one?
I do.
We'll just answer that one and then we'll call it.
Okay. So, Okay. So, well, to be honest with you, what I have is a comment, and it's basically just kind of supporting what we're saying here. 2 comments. Daisy's Time says such a funny but creepy analogy, the vampire fairy thing. Totally agree. And Kit Kat, who I know we've talked to a lot, but I've missed you, Kit Kat. I'm glad to see you. She says, yes, we choose. My circle has become very exclusive, and the healthy people I let in have truly enriched my life. And also, and I love that. And E.S. Siegel says, I love the True Blood anthology. And that's been one that I've used several times, to be fair, but it came to me during an episode once. Anyway, yeah, so I don't know if those are questions, those are more statements, but I think that we've had a really good session. There's been a lot of really positive feedback and information. And yeah, sorry, I thought that I was answering and I wasn't.
Yeah, this was a really great conversation today. I think we covered a lot of ground, and I appreciate it. So I appreciate your time, Angie. Thank you for being here.
Always my pleasure.
And thank you guys for all of your fantastic questions and for supporting each other in the chat. And we will see you next week over on Angie's channel. So, 1:30-ish Eastern Standard Time every Tuesday. We alternate channels. So, Angie, let them know where to find you.
Okay, so youtube.com/Angie Atkinson, or you can actually just type in queenbeing.tv to your browser and you'll get there that way. Or just type in Angie Atkinson here on YouTube. Queenbeing.com is my website. On Facebook, I'm Angie Atkinson. On Twitter, I'm Angie Atkinson. Angie Atkinson, Angie Atkinson.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. And we will see you next week.
See you next week.
Okay.
Have a
bye.
good one. Bye.